Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is the Reverend Victor Robert Farrell. I'm an ordained minister. You've got a treat for the next 5 to 10 minutes. So just sit back, put your feet up. You can still eat and talk and do whatever you need to do. But believe it or not, do you know we've got 66 cities in the United Kingdom? And I'm partnering with United Christian Broadcasters, Premier Christian Radio, on this 400th anniversary of the King James Bible, to go to each of our 66 cities in just 66 days and give a short message from each of the 66 books of the Bible. And believe it or not, it's a 3,300-mile journey, and Hereford is city number 18, and I'm exhausted already. And I've got to speak very briefly, it's kind of like a Jackanory thing, so don't get worried, about the 18th book of the Bible, which is the book of Job, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's probably one of the most scariest books in the Bible you could ever come across. The book of Job is also probably the oldest book in the Bible. We don't know who really wrote it. We think it may have been Moses. Some theologians think he picked up the story when he was in my favourite place in the Bible, the backside of the desert in Midian. I've been to some parishes which appear to be like the backside of the desert, by the way. And he was in Midian and maybe picked up this story of Job. We don't know. Maybe Job wrote it. But it's a fascinating story in that it's a riches to rags to riches story. A riches to rags to riches story. You see, the person, the character of Job, is the person who is the richest man in Israel. He's got 10 children. Not only that, he's got lots of camels and donkeys and oxen and houses, and everything is good for Job. And then the picture changes. It would appear that God gives us this peek behind the veil to see something very unusual, and that is the whole host of angels appearing before the Most High. And within this whole host of angels, one particular fallen one called the devil. When God has the audacity to say to the devil, "Have you seen my servant Job? How wonderful he is. There's nobody like him on all the earth." And then the devil makes this scandalous and awful accusation. He says this, don't worry, I don't think it's the devil, we're all right. He says this: "They only follow you and love you because you protect them and provide for them. You stop protecting and providing for them and they'll curse you for your faith." And the book of Job tells us that God says to the devil, "Okay, do with him whatever you will." And a terrible thing happens. Job loses his 10 children and get killed. He loses all of his houses, he loses his business, he loses everything. And again, the devil comes before God, and God in the book of Job says, "You see, he's still not cursed me." And the devil says, "Well, I tell you what, you take away his life, and he will." And what happens next is that the devil is allowed to afflict Job, so he's in a terrible state. He loses everything. The Bible describes him, and I'm not going to tell you because it'll put you off your dinner, but he's in a terrible state. So much so that when his 3 friends come and visit him, they just don't recognize him at all. And visiting him, they begin to accuse him. They say this to Job: "You know why this has happened to you? All this has happened to you, Job, because you're a bit of a bad lot, really. This has happened to you because secretly you're not a very good person. And stuff like this only happens to very bad people, Job, and you must be very bad indeed." Job has to put his hand up and says, "Oh, it's not like that at all, I haven't done that." But they keep accusing him. And in the end, Job says several things. He says, like we would all do in those circumstances, he says, "I wish I was dead. I can't stand this anymore." And then he says something very profound. He says, "I wish I could go and see God and find out what was going on here. I wish I could find out why all this has happened to me. Why has he allowed this to happen to me?" And I'm coming to the end of my little story now, so this is the most important part, if you could listen up, because now on the scene comes Job. Comes God, rather. And God comes to Job. But he doesn't come to him and says, "Oh, you poor thing, come here, let me just hug you and love you and tell you that everything's going to be okay." No, he comes to Job and in a rather angry tone he says, "Hey you, stand up. I need to speak to you. Who do you think you are? Where were you when I created everything?" And God delights in his creation, and he mentions these great creatures, Leviathan and Behemoth, and the fact that created the heavens and the earth. And eventually Job has to say to God, "You know something, you're right. You are great, and I'm not." Job has to say this to God, "You know," and I don't like this, by the way, just to let you know, I don't like it. He said to him, "You are God, and you can do whatever you like, and nobody's accountable to you." truly are great. And at the end of the story, God comes to Job and says, okay, that's good enough for me. And he says to his three friends, and by the way, you lot, you better ask for an apology from Job and offer a sacrifice to me, otherwise me and you are going to have to talk. And they do. And then God restores to Job everything that he's lost. He gets twice as much as he had before, and he even gets probably a new wife and 10 new children. In fact, he's doubled up on the children because, you know, he's not lost those 10. They're in heaven waiting for him already. The everlasting gospel of Jesus Christ is also in the book of Job. And that's what Hereford Cathedral is all about. It's proclaiming the everlasting gospel of Jesus Christ. Because Job cries out and says, I wish I had a mediator, somebody who would stand between God and me. And Jesus Christ is that mediator between God and men. He is the Son of God, sent from heaven, the Son of Man to die for our sins. And if we put our trust in him, we are forgiven and we become his children. And even though the devil may accuse us, Jesus Christ, the righteous, is our advocate before the Father. This is the gospel. It's the gospel that sounded out from this place for over 1,000 years. It's the gospel that Tim over there takes care of. Thank you for listening to me. May the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine upon you, and give you peace. I'm going to be hanging around for a few more minutes. If you'd like to chat with me, it's my privilege to chat and pray with you. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Tim, that's very